Verse 412. The unintelligent imagine the Samskrita and Asamskrita to be permanent, while they are not, as they are like the stars, a hairnet, an echo, or things seen in a dream. So we live in a physical world, and we know this because of the senses. And the senses pick up various sense objects, like sights, sounds, and so on. And we're aware of these objects. We're aware that we're seeing things. We're aware that we're hearing things. It's just struck me there. When we say that so-and-so is seeing things, or so-and-so is hearing things, we're calling into question their sanity. But seeing things and hearing things is what inclines us to believe that there's something real out there. It's what creates an awareness of there being something out there, an external world. But as was discussed in the previous video, this is the power of consciousness. Whatever we're aware of, we believe is real, even if a short time afterwards we might dismiss that. For example, if we're watching a film, we enter into it. It becomes real. Perhaps this is only for a very short time. Perhaps we dismiss it afterwards, or perhaps we're affected by it, and its reality lingers for a while afterwards. When we're dreaming, the reality of a dream lasts as long as the dream itself, and that can be a whole lifetime. But once we've woken up from it, it's no longer real. So this is consciousness. Whatever consciousness is aware of, and at the moment you're aware of my voice, so you'll be assuming the reality of my voice and of the individual it's apparently emanating from. So this is the power of consciousness. When you wake up from a dream, when you disregard the story, you've woken up from that particular reality. And perhaps there's been a moment in your life when you've woken up from what everybody else regards as reality. And so you might have some feeling for this understanding that what we regard as physical reality is nothing more than a dream. And it's described here as like the stars, which might seem a strange one because stars last a long time. But I think it's the idea of the constellations, actually, the patterns that we make, or our ancestors made, on the stars. They're just patterns, like a hairnet. A hairnet holds the hair in a particular way. An echo, the belief that there's something other than consciousness itself. Or things seen in a dream. And we're told in the first phrase that the unintelligent imagine the Samskrita and and Asamskrita to be permanent. And this is the belief. When you're focused on the physical world, you start asking yourself, well, what's it made up of? So there's the assumption that everything that appears is made up of something. We usually call them atoms. And atoms, in the true sense of the word, aren't supposed to be made up of anything. Although scientists keep finding things that they're made up of, or theorizing what they're made up of. But then again, what they're made up of tends to be made up of other things. But there's this idea that things can be deconstructed to some fundamental component, and this is described as unintelligent. This deconstruction seems to be able to be continued ad infinitum. But that's not the point. These are just stories. If the so-called physical reality is of the same nature as a dream, then what are the mountains in a dream made up of? Dream atoms. Is there no consequence? What we need to realize that all these things are shaped by consciousness. 413 says, as they are like the city of the Gandharvas, a mirage or maya, they are not. Yet they are perceived as if they were real. So is the relativity aspect of existence. And the relativity aspect of existence is trying to understand existence in terms of itself. So when you're trying to explain things in terms of atoms, we need to step back from that. Step back from the belief in an external world, realizing that that belief is actually the power of consciousness itself. Power of consciousness inclining us to believe in whatever it's conscious of. So we come back to consciousness itself, come back to awareness itself, come back to the awareness that's hearing this. This awareness is miraculous. It's also somewhat mischievous.